I need to tell you that today's session will be recorded. The topic for discussion is the innovation mindset. Innovation is critical for organisational success, particularly in today's challenging climate, yet many organisations struggle to make the breakthroughs that characterise real innovation. They're finding that the good ideas generated by stakeholders flounder in development or implementation, leaving them short of the disruptive change needed to succeed in chaotic times. Today, we're going to be hearing from Chris Gildersleeve from Set to Change. Chris and I have been conducting business together in one form or another well, for a very long time, Chris. I won't tell anyone how long. Chris is an innovation and executive evidence-based coach who partners with leaders to enable purposeful change that creates more innovative and engaging organisations. As an evidence-based coach, Chris draws on the latest thinking in personal and organisational purposeful change that supports leaders to chart their way forward through chaos in challenging times. I want to encourage you again to use the chat to submit any questions or comments, and we'll have some time at the end of the presentation for a short Q&A. If you'd like a copy of Chris's presentation, he's more than willing to make it available. Please contact the Chamber office and we can organise that for you. So Chris, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for making the time this morning to come to this session on innovation mindsets. It's a real challenge right now for every business to find ways of moving forward through the COVID crisis, and innovation is really one of the keys to success. I'm just going to share my screen and share some slides with everybody. This is where we just fingers crossed that the technology will work. It worked earlier, so will it work again? And it does. So, as John said, if you have any questions, please pop them in the chat and we'll look at them when we get to near the end of the session. Just to give you a bit of a roadmap, where we're going in this session, well, we're going to start off by sort of asking ourselves a question, well, what is innovation? It's a term which gets used a lot, but let's just go and make sure we're all grounded in what we mean by it. Then we'll be talking about some critical success factors for sustainable innovation. We don't want innovation just starting and then floundering along the way. We want it to be sustainable. And how that goes and impacts organisation change, because the current environment we're in, all organisations that are going to be successful have to go through change to get to, I think the expression is the other side, whatever that might be. And we need to also then start looking at, well, what are mindsets and how they help and how they hinder change? And some of you may have heard the term mindsets. Well, we're going to dive into that a little bit to understand what we're talking about. Then focusing in on what are known as 4 innovation mindsets, which are supported by 8 orientations. Well, what will that mean? Well, we'll see when we get there. And finally, we'll be talking about what you can do as immediate actions from this short session to actually build your innovation mindset. So first of all, what's innovation? Well, innovation is just generally defined as a new idea, creative thoughts, new imaginations in the form of maybe a device or an approach. And we've seen organisations doing that during these times. But it also can be the application of better solutions that meet new requirements, perhaps meeting unarticulated needs or existing market needs. It's something original, more effective, and as a consequence, something new that might go and break into a new market or society. And we have seen some companies during this time breaking into new markets, places they haven't played before, as part of their innovation strategy. It's also that not all innovation requires an inventions. It can be something, taking something and applying it differently. And that goes and ultimately gets to a point where it actually helps solve a problem and thus filling a gap. John, you've had many opportunities to see organisations over your very long career in consulting. It's one of the advantages of being a consultant. You get to go and see many different organisations, large and small. How have you seen innovation in those organisations, and what have you seen which actually helps them become innovative?
Chris, I have to go back to an example I think that we discussed before. It's a long time ago, one of those massive American laundry detergent companies, their vice president of marketing and sales called a conference and told everyone he was sick of promotions where they just gave away 30% on price or 30% more product. has anyone got a better idea? And the man in the room that everyone would expect to come up with a stupid idea did. He came up and he said, why don't we put a diamond in every box? And everyone laughed and booed and shouted him down. But the vice president said, hang on, let's talk about that idea a little bit more. And the result was, in those days, one of the most successful campaigns in their industry for decades. They partnered with a national jeweler, the American version of Michael Hill Jewelers, and they put a small velvet pouch in every packet that contained either a diamond or a fake diamond. Now, it drove an enormous amount of business into the jewelers, as you can imagine, and I'm sure he paid for most of the campaign. but the resultant sales for the of laundry detergent just went through the roof, and it was the benchmark promotion for a long time.
Wow. So that was something which wasn't really large, was it? It was just something highly impactful. So it was something which is disruptive to the markets, but it was something which was small scale, and not all innovation actually has to be something which actually gets noticed outside of where it originated. And in your example, well, it did get noticed outside where it originated by driving the volume of sales.
Yeah.
Here's a nice little quote to think about. This is the antithesis of innovation. Now, and here's some disruptive innovators. Some who you probably know, probably seen around, maybe some who've really even shaken up the markets you're in, but maybe some who you don't know. It's quite a collection there, and there's only a very, very small collection of organisations that have been innovative. For example, Stage Kings, moving from being in the set building business to now making office furniture. Atlassian, an Australian organisation that's shaken up the marketplace as far as technology goes. And I'll talk a little bit more about this company, which most of you probably haven't heard about, called Connective Intelligence, which is from Canada. But amongst all these organisations, there's some common threads. There's been identified 8 key factors which are required for sustainable innovation. The first one is that the organisation is capable of looking at opportunities within themselves, in their processes and systems, whilst actually simultaneously looking outside for ideas and the needs for the market and for new markets. There are also companies which are willing to go and balance experience versus solutions. So they're able to respond to a chaotic environment by actually looking and saying, okay, well, how can we go and create new experiences for those who are our customers through innovative solutions? And they also need to have a good balance of being daring, being bold, and say, well, what can we do to push ourselves out of our comfort zone? How can we push our organisation out of our comfort zone? And part of that is being willing to go and engage in experiential learning, where experimenting is seen as being part of the way of looking forward and accepting that not every experiment will work, but every experiment is actually an opportunity to learn. And the teams are aligned. The people in the organisation are working towards the same goal, a common vision, a way of moving forward. And they're data-driven. They go and use data to understand where the gaps are and what they can do to fill those gaps. And by doing that, they actually help find the new solutions they might need. And part of innovation is actually partnering to an ecosystem, partnering with organisations and with individuals who can actually add value, and also to whom you can add value, remembering the simple law of reciprocity, where if you go and get something, you should be giving something back in return. It's a symbiotic relationship. But holding all that together to make it sustainable is actually the mindset which drives innovation. And that's what we're going to be focusing in on shortly. But before we do that, we'll just spend a little bit of time just looking at what I call the balance of innovation, where we've got to go and have an appetite for risk. To be innovative, we've got to be willing to push the envelope. We also have to go and be able to balance that with analysis of the pitfalls. What might go and not work? And then linking all those together is our optimism, how we can actually have a belief that we can make it happen. If we're not optimistic about making things different, then we're not going to be able to actually drive that forward. So I ask you a question. Yes,
Chris,
John.
can I ask you a question? How does
Yeah,
culture, climate, and mindset impact on an organisation's ability to change?
Well, that's a good question, John, because it goes and it says, well, what is your mindset as a leader of an organisation? What's the mindset in your organisation, and how does that impact the balance? And that, as you've pointed out, we've got the culture, the climate, and the mindset are really driving our ability to act, our ability to make change. So when we go and look at it, we have our organisational climate. It's the shared perceptions, the attitudes of what's currently happening that drives our organisational engagement. Now, which drives people being aligned in our organisation to what has to be done. And we have our culture, which is the shared beliefs, the learnings, the assumptions that sets the behavioural norms and the decision-making within our organisation. Now, underlying all that, you'll notice there's mindset. Mindset is actually the values, beliefs, and thinking preferences that actually that influence our collective attention and action within the organisation. It's actually a tangible expression of an organisation's culture. It's how the organisation thinks. Now,
I'm going to ask again then, can you help me? Chris, how do fixed and growth mindsets relate to innovation?
Well, just before we look at that, let's have a quick look at a business change.
All right.
So we've got a business goal to change, and so any change in organisations moving from our current system across to our future system. And it's a pull where we've got the futures pulling us from where we are. And our ability to do that's driven by our strategy, and that leads to our performance. How our people go and work effectively with us, and how our culture goes and impacts that. And that goes and drives into our business strategy, how we use technology. More and more our businesses, no matter what type of business, has to use technology. But it's also impacted by our mindset, because our strategy is transformed into our performance because of the mindsets we have. And that was also driven, our collective mindset drives how our culture is expressed by our people. Now, John, you were asking, well, what does this mean? What do we mean by mindsets? Well, it's interesting. Ramina mentioned at the beginning of this, before we were starting, that she's heard of fixed and growth mindsets. They're teaching them to kids in school, which is quite common. And that's where a lot of people actually think of what mindsets are. But really, mindsets are a set of assumptions, they're methods, they're notions held by one or more people or groups of people. It creates a powerful incentive to continue to adopt or accept prior behaviours, choices, or tools. It's a way of thinking. And often people can get locked in their way of thinking. For example, a benefit mindset might be where an individual goes and has particular strengths. And John, I know, for example, you're involved with Aaron's Wish. So you're using one of your strengths in being a fantastic public speaker with your experiences with Toastmasters to be able to go and chair their sessions for them. So you're adopting a benefit mindset and saying, how can I contribute to a cause that's greater than myself? Another mindset, which is quite common, is abundance and scarcity mindset. Now, where abundance mindset is where there's plenty for everybody, and scarcity is there's a limited number of resources. I'm sure there's people on this call who've actually used the scarcity mindset to try and drive volume into their business by running specials and by running sales. What it does is it says, get it now because the price is going to go up. So the product at this lower price is going to become scarce. So buy it now rather than run the risk of losing the opportunity going forward.
Do these mindsets only exist in individuals, Chris? Surely.
Well, it's interesting, John. Yes, because the individual mindset goes and really drives our behaviours, which drives our results. And our results drive our mindset. So what we do gets reinforced. If it works, gets reinforced, we do it again. If it doesn't get reinforced by the results, then most people will go and try and find doing something in a different way. But they can also exist at an organisational level. I mentioned collective thinking, and that's the collective mindset of an organisation, which actually drives the strategy and drives the performance. Now, some organisations, their collective mindset is, well, what we've always done works, and even if we get feedback from the market that it's not working, well, we'll keep doing it because it's worked before. That's very much a fixed mindset as far as the organisation is concerned. Whereas other organisations go and say, okay, the game's changed. I've got to change my strategy. They change it. They do some experiments. It goes and leads to a different, hopefully a different performance outcome. If it doesn't work, then they try something else. And that is actually where innovation comes in, is people changing their strategy, trying something new. If it works, then it becomes part of their organisation's DNA going forward. It changes the collective mindset for the organisation.
So how does this play out when we take the business's ultimate target into account, Chris?
Well, good question. Because what is the business's ultimate target? I think a lot of people say, oh, what I want to do is I want to improve results. I'm going to be, maybe for some people here, controversial by saying, no, that's not the ultimate target. The ultimate target for a business is actually to enhance our customer experience. By enhancing our customer experience, we actually create improved results for our businesses. Because without customer experience, people don't come and buy. So the only way of getting enhanced customer experience is actually to improve our customer focus. It helps drive new value creation for customers along the way. And our ability to create that customer focus, improved customer focus, is actually our capability as an organisation. It's our capability to serve customers as part of a customer-centric culture in our business. But without actually measuring what we're doing, we're not going to be able to understand whether we're creating new value for our customers in an effective way to lead to the improved results. What we have to do is we have to go and consider, well, what is our customer-centric focus? How does that go, and how do we measure that? And how does it impact our organisation's capability? So the research by a gentleman who I was actually on a call with at 8 o'clock this morning. He's in Canada. His name is Dr. Rhett Richards. He established an organisation called Connective Intelligence, which has a focus on supporting organisations understand how they can develop very strong mindsets for innovation. Now, we're talking about an organisation mindset. It's the values, the beliefs, the thinking preferences that influence the attention and focus on achieving successful results. It's how an organisation thinks, not how an individual, not how an individual leader thinks, but how the whole organisation thinks. And there's a level of preference and activity for each of. He identified 4 principal mindsets that creates a unique cognitive style or dominant cultural mindset for the organisation. Now that explains why some organisations are successful innovating and some organisations don't, because it's the way they think. Their mindset goes and determines whether they're capable of finding new ways to go forward. And the
Chris,
4 mindsets. Yes,
Chris, would it be best for that those mindsets to be balanced in an organisation?
Well, there's 4 of them, and the 4 of them being a focus on new ideas, a focus on solutions, a focus on information and proof, a focus on values and integration. Yeah, well, it might be really good if they were all balanced, but the reality is that in most organisations, there is an imbalance. In most organisations, there is a preference in thinking to one mindset. For example, in this particular example, we can see that the organisation has a focus on the analyse mindset. Now, the analyse mindset is about data. It's about, let's make sure we know all the numbers. Give me the proof. So people will go to meetings and they will have spreadsheet after spreadsheet. Yet the same organisation, they really don't have a focus on alignment. So in this organisation, the people aren't all working in the same direction. They're not all engaged, which is essential for the organisation to be successful. So they're putting all their time into the data and not putting the effort into having everybody rowing in the same direction.
Okay.
They also have a degree of interest in imagining, discovering new ways in resolving. So with this organisation, if we can go and help them lift their aligned mindset and lift their imagine and resolve to get to the same level of analyse, they could be more balanced in their thinking. Now, I mentioned that there's underlying these 4 mindsets, there is actually 8 innovation orientations. I'll just quickly go through those because it's important to understand that these actually shape and steer the organisation and its leaders' approach to growth. They capture people's experiences, perceptions regarding the actual behaviours, actions and activities that are or are not occurring, which influence its ability to grow through innovation and adaptive change. Because the bottom line is, if you want the business to grow, you've got to do something different, and that's an innovative action. So the first of those is creative. It's a degree to which processes and skills are developed to improve creative thought in the organisation. So does the organisation encourage people to be creative, or is it saying this is the way we do it here? And strategic, the degree of sensitivity and responsiveness to changes in external environment. Is it an organisation where people are always scanning the horizon to see what's coming, or is it spending the time looking at the spreadsheet to see what happened yesterday? It's innovative, the degree to which innovation is valued in the organisation, the way it's resourced, the way it's executed to create new value. Is it an organisation where people are orientated to actually being innovative in their day-to-day work? And learning, the degree to which the knowledge is captured and shared to enhance future effectiveness. That's the great wonder of libraries in our society. They go and capture the knowledge which has been there, and it makes it available for the future for learning. It's now generally called Wikipedia and the internet. Collaboration, the degree to which collaboration is maximised within and between functions. And externally, now, is it an organisation where people are in their silos fighting their turf wars, or is it an organisation where everybody is openly collaborating so that they can go and find the best solution for their customer? Connective, the degree to which people, networks and IT are used to enhance information, idea sharing. Now, are people networking in the organisation? Are they having casual conversations? Are they using the IT platforms to enhance information? For example, does the organisation have a wiki about what it does with its customers? There's the cultural orientation, the degree which the environment motivates, encourages new thinking. Does the organisation's culture say, well, we really want you to think differently here and come up with new ideas? Now, for example, Atlassian is a classic example of that, where the leaders of that organisation say, we want you to think differently, we want new ideas, we don't want to hear what we've talked about yesterday. And leadership. Do the leaders model the behaviours that support growth and transformation, or do the leaders actually inhibit growth and transformation by their behaviour, sending the message to people, well, yeah, you might have ideas, but it's my ideas which are really the paramount ideas in this organisation. So how do we go and move this forward? Well, innovative disruption happens when the whole organisation shares that innovation mindset, not just the leaders, not just a few people in the innovation section of the organisation. In a smaller organisation, it is even more paramount that everybody is sharing this innovation mindset for the organisation to be successful. And there's some tools to develop by my colleague, my friend, Dr. Brett Richards. The first one's called an organisational growth indicator. What he's managed to demonstrate is that by revealing the mindsets and the orientations that are predominant in the organisation, you can actually directly link the change in those to the organisation's performance. So when an organisation is higher, has a higher measure on the organisational growth indicator, there is much more likely to exceed the performance of its peers in the marketplace. From a leadership perspective, there's an instrument called the Growth Leadership Indicator, which actually reveals the mindsets and orientations that are predominant in an organisation's leaders. So what are the organisation's leaders thinking? How are they behaving in what they are executing? And together they actually provide an insight into the organisational leadership levels concerning their effectiveness of the current business focus and whether actually that will go and support the growth goals and competitive strategy of the organisation. It actually goes and helps us understand and make visible what is generally invisible in the organisation's innovative growth engine. It helps us go and unpack it. It unpacks it by, first of all, by us understanding the key drivers of change, led innovation, how ready the organisation is and its future potential for that. The 4 key mindsets and 8 orientations are actually linked directly to the future value creation and growth of the organisation. And it qualified shares, values and beliefs. So it actually gives an indication, very clear indication of the mindsets of the organisation, which are actually invisible to people within the organisation because they're in the bowl, in the fish bowl, they're swimming in that water, they're used to that water, they can't see what it looks like when they're inside. The OGI actually goes and gives an opportunity for leaders to step out of the organisation and see what's going on in the fish bowl. And it looks at the interdependence of the driving forces. Now, what's working for and working against in the innovation engine and growth in the organisation. And finally, it actually gives a pathway to help address and align the gaps to achieving financial goals in an organisation. That's a tool which is available, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But probably what everyone here would like to find is, well, what can I do to help build innovation in my organisation? What can I do to go and make sure that I have, and the people in my organisation have, an innovation mindset? So let's talk about the Imagine. Imagine's the focus on new ideas and discovery. Ways you can go and help unpack that in your organisation is to loosen up the rigidities of ingrained assumptions. Now, what are the assumptions you've made about doing things differently? Is the phrase, we've tried that before, it didn't work, common in your organisation? It's about seeing things differently and seeing so you can actually see new things and visualising what's required for future success. Resolve mindset, which is a focus on solutions and results. It's about transforming good ideas into value-added solutions. It's about overcoming resistance and obstacles. And resistance might actually not be by employees. It could be within yourself as a leader. Feeling that, oh, well, there's too much risk there. I don't have enough data, so I'm not going to do anything with it. But it's about gaining insight from successes and from failures, having that learning orientation. The analyse, it's focus on information and proof. Well, it's bringing together diverse knowledge and sources, and it's actually being willing to dive deep into the data and information when solution finding. Saying, okay, we've got this customer data. What does it really mean? It's not about finding reasons why we're not being well. It's actually about finding what we can do differently to do better, and helping accelerate the flow of ideas and knowledge across the silos of an organisation. The aligned mindset's about a focus on values and integration. It's about integrating the values, vision and purpose with the strategies. Are they aligned? Are they linked together? And it's about engaging the hearts and minds of people, getting people focused on what we're doing, but more than that, actually having people believe the optimism in the organisation, being able to be successful. Getting a focus on the culture, the personal growth, and even on stretch goals for individuals in the business. There is something more which people can do if they wish, and that is they set a growth target. Figure out, okay, where are you relative to the market? Where does your organisation aspire to be? Now, do you want to be like Amazon? Or do you want to be like Bundaberg, who went and moved from making rum to making hand sanitizer? I think there was a brewery here in Sydney called, what's it called? The Newtowner, makes the Newtowner. They moved from making beer to making hand sanitizer. So where do you aspire to be? Collecting some data. Now, what are the strengths and the development needs of your organisations and your leaders' innovation mindset? Now, are you innovation fit? Are your leaders innovation fit, or do you need to go and do things, start to learn to think in a different way? And plan your journey. Create and implement the journey to building innovation mindsets and orientations. But you build your journey on the data which you've collected. That way you've got a clear goal to actually be able to then embed the new way, locking in the mindsets and the orientations into your organisation's fabric. Now, this is a challenging change journey for many organisations. Organisations can use the OGI to understand the overall organisation mindset, or if they want, smaller organisations often do this, is start with the growth leadership inventory, which goes and helps understand, well, how are the leaders thinking, and working with them to help them begin to change their mindsets and to strengthen their innovation ability. Sitting there with this is often leadership coaching and organisation learning needs to support these journeys, because changing a mindset is about changing the habits of, in many cases, a lifetime for an individual. And for an organisation, it can be about changing the mindset which has been created over generations. So leadership coaching, organisation learning is there, can help support the overall journey of building new sustainable mindsets. I'll leave you with a quote. This is by one of my favourite innovators. This individual has almost 1,100 US patents to his name, and the holder of over 2,300 patents worldwide. This individual, because of his willingness to innovate, every item that uses electricity, we're really have to go and reach out to him and say thank you. He also went and helped develop the concrete which we use in commercial buildings. Without his innovations, we wouldn't have the motion picture industry and what has flowed from that. We wouldn't have the recording industry. We wouldn't even have the X-ray machine. And this innovator actually put it this way. If we did all the things we're capable of, we would actually literally astound ourselves. So I'd encourage you to go and ask yourself the question, what can we do differently? How can we go and drive innovation in our organisation so that we as leaders in our community can actually help our economy come out of COVID in a stronger state than when it went in? So if you want to go through growth through disruption, please reach out to me. And happy to take phone calls. You can book some time with me also through an innovative product called Calendly, where you can go and just seize my calendar. It doesn't tell you what I'm doing, but it goes and says you where I've got some free space so you can book in. So thank you very much for your time. Let's go and turn to the chat to see if there's any questions on there.